Hi, this is Reverend Dr. Chuck Currie. If you were with me a minute ago, somehow got disconnected, but glad to have the chance to talk with you all for a few minutes this evening. We're getting ready for the dinner hour here on the West Coast, and I know a lot of people are getting settled in for the evening out in the East and the Midwest. But I wanted to talk with you all for just a little bit here about the events that have transpired in our country over the last 72 hours or so. It's been a pretty difficult period, right? We've not only dealt with a series of bombing attempts against national leaders in our country, people who might be considered political opponents of the current administration, who are oftentimes vilified on social media and in other venues, political venues. We've dealt with the brazen and brutal murder of two African Americans by somebody who killed them just because of the color of their skin. And then, of course, we dealt and are still dealing with the terrible events in Pittsburgh this weekend. And what we now know is the largest act of anti-Semitic violence in our country's history. That concerns me for a lot of different reasons. One of them, of course, is that as a person of faith, I'm just abhorred by the use of violence in this fashion, any fashion. Also, as a Christian minister, as a minister in the United Church of Christ, I have to recognize that anti-Semitism is rooted in the Christian tradition, and we all have to be aware of that. It would be easy and convenient for us to say that the current political climate, particularly the rise in anti-Semitic acts in our country, is the sole responsibility of the president and his Twitter account, but that's just not right. We have to take into account that you can find anti-Semitism in our progressive Christian denominations. You can find it in our institutes of higher learning. It is pervasive, and we need to do some reflection on it in the same way that we need to reflect on race in our country and how it is that we contribute to the problem of racism and institutional racism in the United States, and how it is that we can play a more constructive role. In just a little bit, in about an hour or so, 7 o'clock here on the West Coast, I'll be joining students here on my campus for a vigil, just like people have done all across America over the last couple of days, to remember those who were killed in Pittsburgh. Yesterday, I attended a vigil in Portland, where I live, at Congregation Beth Israel, where over 1,000 individuals packed the synagogue there. Our governor, Kate Brown, was there. Our United States Senator, Ron Wyden, our congressperson for the 1st Congressional District, Congressman Suzanne Bonavici, was there. Our mayor, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, was there, and I thank them all for their powerful words. But also there were Christian leaders standing alongside Jewish leaders and Muslim leaders standing alongside Jewish leaders to say that as all people of faith, we reject the violence that we are seeing in our country today and the rhetoric that we are seeing in our country today. But my message tonight is specifically, I want to say something to young people out there, to students and to other young people in our country about the situation we find ourselves in today. There are many who have said that this is the most divided time in American history since the Civil War, or at least the period right before the Civil War. And I think that's a pretty good historical analogy. We are certainly divided as a country, and that division is resulting in an uptick in violence, an uptick in hate crimes against Jewish Americans, to be sure, certainly against gay and lesbian Americans, also African Americans. Any number of people under attack right now, immigrants as well. I don't want to forget that. And we need to stand up to that. You know, and I think this is maybe a mistake that I've done as a professor and as a university chaplain, and maybe other institutions do as well. We are very supportive of activism as it occurs in the moment when a crisis presents itself, such as the shooting that just happened in Pittsburgh. And we should be very supportive of you students and other young people who are getting involved. I know that we tried to provide every means of support out of my office to students who were involved in protest after Ferguson, for example. What we maybe haven't taught students as well, although I know many of you do get this, is that what we need is a sustained movement from students. Uh, you look out at the complexity of all the different issues that young people are facing today, and young people have gotten an incredibly raw deal. Not only do we have to deal with problems like anti-Semitism in our country, not only do we have to deal with rising hate crimes against all these different population groups that I mentioned, or the division in our country that we face, or some of the world crises that we face, but we also face this incredibly difficult issue of climate change. And that rests falls squarely on the next generation of Americans. It'll impact you all more than it will impact me. And as a parent of two young kids, that makes me incredibly sad and incredibly frustrated that we're not doing as much as we need to do. And that's where you all come in. This is where the young people in our country come in. We need you to be part of a sustained movement to change the direction of our country and our world. And I know that's an incredibly large ask, and it's an incredibly large task, but it is desperately needed today. Activism around particular issues and the heat of the moment is great and it's important, but we need a sustained movement of change. And I know that there are people like myself who are a little bit older, although I still consider myself pretty young, people who are older who want to do everything possible to support young people in this direction. We need a sustained movement to address violence. We need a sustained movement to address hate. We need a sustained movement to address the climate change crisis in this country. And it really is going to be up to you young people to do that. Now, in the complexity of all this, it's easy to say there's just nothing that we can do. But to me, I've always been saying this. I've been saying this since I was an 18-year-old student activist myself, working on homeless issues for the first time. What we face in this country is not just a political crisis, but it is a spiritual crisis. It's about how it is that we relate to one another. In the Christian tradition, we talk about the greatest commandment. The greatest commandment says that you have to love your neighbor and you have to love God. And if you don't do that, then change is not possible. And I do believe that the complexity of all of these issues boils down to a question about love. Do we love our neighbor? And if we do love our neighbor, then we have to do something about gun violence in this country. We have to get rid of assault weapons and change the culture of our society. If we love people, if we really truly love people, we are going to have to be willing to give up some of the comforts that we have to address the climate change crisis. And I think that it will be young people in the United States who will have to force that change. I can help you. I can stand with you, and other people can stand with you. And we have a responsibility. My generation and the generation that precedes me has a responsibility to act on this issue. But having worked on this issue and worked on all these different issues for the majority of my lifetime, I can tell you that my generation's not willing to change. My parents' generation not willing to change, no matter how many good people there might be out there who want to change. We're going to have to be forced into it. And that means that you all have to get politically active in ways that you have not done before and that my generation has not done before. We have to expect more of you because the stakes are so high, and I'm sorry about that. I really am truly sorry about that. I hoped that we would be able to do more, and I've still not given up on trying to help create change in our country. I'm not going to give up until the day I die to create change in our country and to create change in our world. But I recognize that we're going to have to be pushed into making the change that we need. I'm not talking about being pushed by violence. I don't think violence ever moves us forward. It only moves us backwards. This movement has to be one of nonviolent social change. And so I want you to organize on your college campuses. I want you to organize on my college campus and to get us more involved in these issues, to say to legislators that you won't allow business to go on as normal if they don't address these issues. There's so much that has to be done. And certainly the great civil rights movement in our country continues to be a model for organizing. It continues to be an ethical model for promoting social change. But Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, they've been made into what's the right word I want to use? A very sanitized version of what that movement was. They disrupted society. They said the economics of society will not continue to move on unless there is progress on racial justice issues. And we need that same movement today, that same kind of energy today, that kind of same ethical grounding today to get us to address climate change, to get us to address violence. Now, I do blame the president for a lot of what's happened right now. He has a unique voice as the president of the United States, and I've seen the presidential voice used by a lot of people. I saw it up close with President Obama on a number of occasions. The president can make or break a nation by bringing us together during times of difficulty or tearing us apart. And this president is unique in the way that he has torn us apart. And that's why he's been criticized by so many people, including former Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. It's an unusual circumstance. But what's going on with the current president won't change unless all of you young people get out and vote. Y'all got to vote. You've got to vote in numbers that are unprecedented in this election. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I do want you to get out there and vote. And you've got to organize. You've got to be part of a movement for change. And that movement has many facets, whether it's the environment, whether it's violence in our country, whether it's anti-Semitism in our country, whether it's racial reconciliation in our country, whether it is a movement to try and address sexual violence in our country on our college campuses, whether it is a movement to try and promote equality for gays and lesbians in our country. This movement has to be broad, it has to be inclusive, it has to be nonviolent, and it has to be student-led. It has to be led by our young people. So however I can help you, please let me know. Leave a message in the comments section. Call my office here at the university. I have a phone number. It's I'll put it in the comments section, but it's 503-352-2032. I'll put it up there. Send me an email. If you're a young person, you want to get involved, I will help you get involved. But we need you more than ever. Otherwise, there's going to be more mass shootings. The vigil that we held, or we're going to hold tonight, is not the first candlelight vigil that I've held here after a mass shooting. And you all have probably been to too many yourselves. And we've got to change that reality. And I have hope that with you all, with this next generation, that great things can happen. And I want to help you in any way possible. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for the work that you're already doing. And I know that all of us, myself included, have to do a lot more. Talk to you soon.